Welcome to the Home Building Hub, your essential podcast guide to building your new home. Hosted by industry experts Colin Bischoff and Darren Brennan, this conversational podcast will help better educate you about all things new home building so you can avoid costly mistakes and enjoy your building experience to the fullest, no matter which home builder you choose.
Hey there, folks. Welcome to the Home Building Hub. You're with Colin and co-host Darren Brennan, as always. Today, Daz, we've got a very special guest. We've had him on once before, and it is Keith Ryan from HIA Victoria, Executive Director here at HIA in Victoria. We're going to talk about a new acronym that is in town, Dazza. It's called the BPC. Stands for the Building and Plumbing Commission. And basically, it is here to swallow up the other three acronyms, functions, being the VBA, DBDRV, and the VMIA. How's that for a mouthful for clients trying to listen and understand?
You love an acronym, mate. You love an acronym. So we're amongst it nicely.
Apparently, our industry loves an acronym, so I think this will make life easier even just on that front. So for context, everyone, the VBA is the Victorian Building Authority, overseeing builders' registrations, inspections, compliance, and enforcement. DBDRV is Domestic Building Dispute Resolution in Victoria, provides free mediation for domestic building disputes before they go to VCAT, another acronym. VMIA is the Victoria Managed Insurance Authority, which provides domestic building insurance policies for builders. So basically, I guess our understanding is that the newly introduced BPC is taking over all of those functions. And not only that, the BPC will implement new reforms and have enhanced powers over what's available right now with the current system. So, Dazza, I think realistically, you and I, mate, we're not smart enough to talk about this stuff. So, as we said at the top, we've got
the experts in, mate.
We've got to get the experts in.
Absolutely.
Otherwise, we'll just fumble our way through it and most likely get it wrong. So, we'd like to welcome Keith, as I said, Executive Director of HIA Victoria. He's going to push us clowns aside and he's going to talk through and answer a few of those key questions around the BPC and a few other goodies. And hopefully we can get to an update or two in the industry as well. So, Keith, welcome back.
Great. Well, thank you very much, both Colin and Darren, for having me. It's great to be with you today.
That's it. Really appreciate you jumping on line. And it's obviously big news for the industry and a big change coming up. So I think it'll be a really interesting episode.
Oh, look, definitely. Look, the BPC, pardon me, is a very new organisation, but it's very much carrying on the workload of three previous organisations. It's also a new organisation which is going to take time to evolve. So in many ways, it's still business as usual for most builders who have to deal with the BPC. They'll mainly deal with it through its old VBA function. The DBDRV is more for when things go wrong, and the VMIA section, which is the domestic building insurance, really is more of an annual routine interaction at most. So for most builders, they won't see too much changing quickly. And in fact, when you go to the BPC website, you'll see that they're still using some of the older websites, just with a bit of a logo up top saying, we're now to BPC. That's okay. They don't want to be spending a small fortune changing their websites, but they will be gradually evolving. And as the year goes on, and more likely next year, we'll start to see some new powers, which we'll talk about shortly, like the rectification orders, the new statutory insurance scheme, or SIS as they're calling it. And they've got to find another acronym for that. That's terrible. But they'll have a new insurance system. They will have new powers. So for builders, it's going to be more of a slow burn. For consumers, it's probably a little bit different. When I was on your show last time, I talked about the way that we at HIA actually were often dealing with some of the fallout from consumers who were trying to get help from government when they were having issues with their build. And they'll be calling up one agency and being told, no, you've got to speak to the other. And there were a lot of consumers who were falling between the cracks and quite frankly, in desperation, were contacting people like HIA saying, can you please help us? Now, with this new BPC, the government's made some pretty big promises and they have a lot of pressure on them to deliver. At this stage, I think there are some good signs for consumers. The buck passing opportunity is now gone. If you're a consumer who's not happy with how things are going with your build, you should be able to contact the BPC and say, I have a concern. What can be done to help me?
Yeah.
There's no reason for BPC to say, oh, sorry, there's another government agency you have to go to. There is probably one important exception to that. If you're dealing with a dodgy tradie, someone who's not registered, someone who's doing a very small amount of work for you, you might find you get pushed back to Consumer Affairs. But realistically, if you've got any issue with a builder, particularly when they're charging you more than $10,000, the BPC should be the people who give you a yes or no or maybe answer. It won't be a go somewhere else. So that's probably a very big part of what the BPC is going to be expected to do. And so ideally for consumers, they should now have a bit more certainty. I think a couple of other things to make a point about the BPC is that there'll be a degree of cynicism. A lot of people will say, well, look, you've got 3 existing agencies who have all been merged into effectively one office, but the same people are there. And we have seen this before. About, I forget how many years ago it was now, we had the old Building Commission, which was then the Building Control Commission, become the VBA. And a lot of the issues which led to the VBA being created weren't necessarily solved because a lot of the people who were at the BPC, or sorry, at the Building Commission, carried on to the VBA. So I can understand there'll probably be a degree of cynicism about whether or not this new BPC will actually do much.
Yeah.
That said, it's probably worth stressing that with the BPC, its core is the VBA, which has been through a cultural change in the last year. The way they interact with builders has changed quite a bit. They've become a lot more aggressive with builders who are doing the wrong thing. They've become a bit more conciliatory with builders who are trying to do the right thing. I'm not going to say they're perfect, but there's been a clear cultural change in how they interact with people. And I expect it's happening internally as well. And whilst I'm an outsider, what I see does seem to suggest that there is a bit of a cultural change underway. So probably the BPC, yes, it's the VBA plus some extra agencies, but there probably is still cause for optimism that it will be a bit different to the old VBA. And I think we need to remain confident at this stage that we should see some changes.
Given the current Victorian economy, Keith, it's not a cost saving exercise. You think in amalgamating 3 into 1, you don't see it heading
No,
that far.
no, definitely not. Look, it's actually going to cost them a fair bit of money to doing things like moving all the staff, having to rebrand, having to have websites updated. It actually takes a fair bit of effort, and having had to do it myself with jobs in the past, it's not a task you take on to save money. And so, no, I think we can be pretty confident that this is not about saving money. That said, when we had this year's state budget for the Victorian government, it was extremely disappointing to see that the Victorian government doesn't seem to have provided more funding to help the BPC establish itself. There was some extra funding for the VBA the year before to help them with their functions, but there wasn't any mention of extra funding this year to help the BPC establish itself. Because as we'll talk about shortly, it's going to have a pretty big workload, and I'm just not entirely confident that they're going to have enough resources to do it properly. So there is that challenge, but no, it's definitely not about saving money.
And in the end, if they don't have the resources, that just blows timeframes out for people, doesn't it? Really, the problem doesn't go
Well, yes. Look, and that's probably, look, the biggest challenge for the BPC, when you make, and really it should be a challenge for the Victorian government because they're the ones who made the call. When you make big promises, you need to be willing to deliver and you need to be able to put the work in to deliver. The government's made big promises. I believe that they intend to try and honour those promises, but I also don't think they've yet put in the resources or necessarily thought through how they can make sure they honour those promises. And I think that is going to be the challenge for the team leading the BPC, but more importantly for the government, who has to make sure it has the resources and the political support to do its job properly. And that's where we'll see the government, and particularly the ministers, being tested over the coming year.
It's good. Oh well, it certainly sounds positive in terms of what it's bringing the 3 functions together. So that's I think a really positive sign, and hopefully we see, as you said, more speed, more less buck passing within those departments, and
Yes,
the consumer being well looked after as well as the builder, from both.
indeed.
So,
That's right. And it's probably worth stressing that consumers get passed backwards and forwards, but so do builders when they have to get their registration. Under the old system, they had to deal with the VBA to get their builder's license, builder registration. But to be assessed for getting insurance, they had to go through either the VMIA, which is now part of the BPC, or go for a private company. And there was only one or two left that were doing that. And that meant that you could have builders being told, oh, sorry, your DBI hasn't been sorted, so we can't finish your license. Or the DBI people saying, oh, no, the license has to be sorted. So for builders, there's also that frustration. We now have that one agency once again, which should be getting it right and talking to each other and not relying on the fact, sorry, it's a different agency, I can't help you. So there is a benefit there for builders as well.
Yeah.
yep.
So one of the big changes is, I think that the builders listening will want to hear the answer to this one, but one of the big changes is the ability for the VPC to issue rectification orders after handover. So it seems that's going to be a great peace of mind for buyers. I can understand that side of it, but being someone that works in this industry on the builder side day in, day out, I can't help but think about some customers who might be taking advantage of it, some unreasonable ones, because they're not all reasonable, I would say. So please help us understand, how do you think this will work, and how will it, I suppose, be fairly managed from that point of view, this rectification order
Yeah, look,
implementation?
look, the rectification order is a really important part of the new powers for the BPC, and it is something that, if it's used wisely, could make a very big difference for consumers who are really in trouble and really need help. The basic principle that you can have a regulator come in to a building site, either if it's being built or a home that's been finished and has serious defects, and say to a builder, look, you have to sort this out, is not a bad one. If you're a consumer who's had the misfortune to engage a dodgy builder, you are going to find yourself in a situation potentially where you might have to go through a legal process that takes not months, but usually years to be resolved. And it is an appalling process. You find yourself going through the DBDRV process where you have to sit around and try and conciliate. And really, for some cases, conciliation just doesn't work. If someone doesn't want to do a deal, they will just game it, and it can be dragged out. Then when you finish that process, unless you get extraordinarily lucky, you're going to find yourself being told, okay, now it's off to VCAT, and you'll be hopefully finished in a couple of years. Now, that sort of process is appalling. Unfortunately, it's not really that uncommon for anyone who has to deal with the legal dispute resolution process. What we find is that, and look, I used to be a young commercial litigation lawyer, and it used to take months and months to get cases progressed. They're probably golden days now compared to what happens for lawyers who have to run those sorts of cases. The legal system is so bogged down with so many procedural steps, so many safeguards, so many expectations about how the process has to work. It's effectively broken. And quite frankly, processes like the rectification order being introduced are very much part of a trend, which I think the legal profession have been extraordinarily naive about, of removing from courts and the legal profession the power to resolve disputes. Instead, the governments are saying, well, look, legal profession, you've stuffed this up. You just don't provide a service that works. And so in selected cases, you're starting to see governments go, well, okay, we'll bring in our own system, which will hopefully get a quicker outcome. And so for consumers who are facing an issue with a builder, it sounds like a great outcome because, okay, I've got a problem with my builder, their work is defective, I want it fixed. Instead of worrying about lawyers spending tens of thousands of dollars, I'll just go to a government regulator who will give me an immediate answer and I'll get a quick solution. It sounds fantastic. And so realistically, if you're even the most decent, gentle consumer in the world, someone who wants to be fair to your builder, if you know you've got that shortcut, that simple process you can follow, you're going to take it every time. Why wouldn't you? The problem for HIA is, well, there's two key concerns we have. The first one is that it's a one-sided process. Most disputes about building work do not involve a builder has come in and completely made a mess of it, and that's the end of it. There's usually a lot of other issues involved, disputes about timing, disputes about what was meant to be built, disputes about payment. And they all form part of a mix that has to be resolved. What this new system says, though, is to a consumer, you will get your immediate gratification, but other side, you'll just have to go through the old existing broken system, which will continue to take years. So there is a massive challenge there. Everyone who's a consumer will, regardless of their viewpoint on how they should treat people, will take the shortcut. They'd be mad not to. So what does that mean for builders who have to deal with rectification orders? Well, here's where it probably gets a little bit easier for builders. The cruel reality is consumers making these claims will be making them very quickly. From July onwards, when we expect to see this system fully kicking in, so July next year, the BPC is probably going to be deluged with people saying, I want my dispute resolved. I want my answer. I want my gratification ASAP. How is the BPC going to deal with that? There's only one logical way they can do it. They're going to have to learn very quickly to triage and say to a lot of people, your concern is not important enough. You will have to wait. Now, if consumers are rational and go, well, I should work with the builder first, and most builders, and Darren and Colin, you know this as well as me, they don't want to have disputes going on. They want to resolve them. They want their clients to be happy. Builders rely on referrals. They rely on build customers saying, my home was built, it was built beautifully, I'm very happy. So they don't want disputes. So the good builders will find ways to resolve it. But when you've got clients who need a quick solution, they want their dispute resolved, they're going to take this new process because it's rational. It's got nothing to do with them wanting to be unfair to the builder. It's got nothing to do with the builder's approach. They will just do it. So we're going to have a flood of claims potentially coming through, many of which will be probably quite minor things, but why not, if you're a consumer, go to the quick solution? Why wait for the old broken system to resolve your dispute? So how is the BPC going to deal with that? There's also another cruel reality, which and this is quite sad. We do find that a lot of the consumers who are most deserving of help, the ones who have really been badly taken advantage of by dodgy builders, are normally people who have some sort of disadvantage. It might be cultural, it might be educational, it might be financial, or it might just be they're too nice a person. Those people will probably be the ones who don't rush off on day one or day two to the BPC, and instead will be dragging out, waiting for their builder to suddenly magically do the right thing if they're dealing with a dodgy builder. And they won't be using this new system. So they will be probably, unless there's a way found to help them to go to the BPC, they will be left living in their homes without occupancy permits, left waiting for their leaks to be fixed, left waiting for the builder to finish their job, and they won't get any help. And that's a really sad thing, because that's the cases that I'm sure and I believe the government want to fix. And this system, I hate to say it, will basically be designed not by intent, but by incompetence to block those people out.
Be the old person who shouts the loudest is heard the most, I guess.
Yeah.
That's right, absolutely. And that is what is probably the tragedy of this whole reform. It's clearly designed on good intentions.
Yeah.
I have no doubt those people in government who pushed this forward wanted to help consumers, wanted to deal with these particularly horrible cases, but unfortunately they've developed a solution which will be used by the bulk who don't have the major issues, and the ones who are a very small minority and are dealing with a very small minority of builders who are dodgy, they will probably find themselves waiting and not getting much of a relief. So that is the tragedy of this whole reform.
I think In fairness, I've only worked with and for builders that would never be in a position where they're doing anything dodgy that doesn't, go through. I'm more talking about, a building consultant coming along and giving a list of 50 pages of things that they think should be rectified, and the builder saying, "Look, I'll agree to these five or six, but the rest are really not part of
Yes,
compliance," like that sort of situation. So more for the I just haven't been exposed to the dodgy builder. So
yes,
my question was more around. So I do feel for those people and having a place for them to call and come to. Being a person myself who's been through the process of a builder who's gone into liquidation, I have actually been bounced around from one function to the next. So I've been through that personally. So when I ask and I mention around unreasonable clients, I do
mm,
mean the minority and not the majority. And I can
yes,
just see and sense talking to builders, they're concerned that they're going to be taken advantage of because the person's like they threaten reviews. These people, they're like, I've had legit experience with people who we've done absolutely everything for, and they're like, if you do not give me my money back, despite the fact I know it was non-refundable, I will put a 1-star review on. It's like we get threats like that every single
yes.
day. I'm only referring to those people. But it sounds like, based on your answer there, Keith, that it's going to take some time to essentially settle in, and where the benchmarks may lay, that may take some time. And the
Yes,
BPC will be essentially saying to that client, if they are being unreasonable, hey, you're being unreasonable. Go
and
back to
that's
your
where, yeah,
builder.
and that's where the political will and the ability to say no is going to be critical for the BPC.
Yeah.
And look,
Okay.
there is a bit of glimmer of hope here with what we know have happened in the past. Before DBDRV existed, there used to be a body called the Building Advice Conciliation Service, which was a combination of consumer affairs and building commission VBA staff. And the feedback I got from members was that with that process, you would have the VBA building compliance inspectors going along to these conciliations and looking at the building work and saying to the consumer, look, you've got a list of, say, 10 issues, but only one or two of them are actually really issues. The rest are just rubbish. You're
Yeah.
wasting my time. And so the builder would go, okay, well, the building inspector who does work for the government's telling me I've stuffed up two things. Okay, fair enough. I can accept that. And they'll generally agree to fix it. And most consumers, when they had someone experience from government saying, look, sorry, but those other things, be it what you've picked up yourself or be it what's been given to you by a consultant with a cut and paste report, they're just rubbish, it would lead to an outcome. So if the BPC and their inspectors say to consumers, okay, here's your list of 50 things, most of them are complete rubbish, they are just not defects, they aren't relevant, and here are the two that matter. Oh, and guess what? The builder's gone, yes, I agree, I'm going to fix them. Your dispute's over. Now, if they're prepared to do that approach and consumers realise from day one that that's how it's going to be, they can't go off and buy a report to try and find an excuse to say, I'm not going to pay my final payment. That would probably very quickly settle things down. We know that when DBDRV first started, they had very inexperienced young conciliators. They would take as gospel the complaints from the consumer. Every complaint from a consumer was important. It had to be given due weight, even if to a rational person with any sort of experience, it was garbage. Like a classic we had was, I think it was the first month, we had a case where one of the serious defects that had to be resolved was a urine stain in the carpet of a 7-year occupied house. Now, and by the way, the owner of that house had pets. Now, that was taken as being something that had to be considered as part of this whole process, whereas common sense would tell you, well, surely you're taking that it's got to be dealt with. So if the BPC can actually have the spine early on and the political backing, and that's where it's going to be important, to say to consumers, look, these are the matters that really matter. The rest is guff. Like you've stood next to the wall and you can see the paint isn't quite perfect. Well, sorry, no. If that's how they approach it and consumers learn from day one, but you can't go in with all sorts of rubbish, then this could settle down and it could work okay.
Yeah,
Is there
that's the key.
any other states that have run a similar scenario like this, Keith?
Well, there are rectification order style powers in New South Wales. We also know that Queensland has a similar insurance system to what our government's looking to set up, the
Yep.
so-called first resort insurance system. They, though, do seem to have much stricter timelines for their defects. So depending on how the Victorian system finally comes out, Queensland, it's more you've got to get in quickly and get it resolved. We do get feedback from our Queensland members, and my Queensland colleagues have told me that in practice, yes, there are a lot of builders who just basically have to accept and fix defects that aren't really genuine just to get these things resolved and to avoid having an insurance claim made. That said, we do know that as a general rule, most of our reputable members, when they get clients coming in with issues, particularly around handover time, most builders will just fix them anyway. It's just easier to resolve these things and not have them drag on. But the feedback from Queensland has been that yes, it's more expensive and the consumer does have a bit more power. But the Queensland system as it works at the moment, they've had years to adjust. But secondly, I think they've also got more rational timeframes, which probably helps as well.
Yeah, good. So the other one, Keith, obviously with the insurance and dispute resolution also moving under the BBC, what are the key benefits for home buyers, and are there any benefits of that change to the builders as well, I guess?
Look, with the insurance system, we don't yet know exactly how it's going to work. There's currently some consultation underway with industry about the way the insurance claim should work and how builders should be able to get access to the insurance, or what we're now calling the prescribed minimum financial requirements. That will be pretty critical, but at its heart, the insurance will be designed to deal with a situation where a client's got a claim, the builder has refused or failed to fix it, and the client wants to get their problem fixed. Under this system, with first resort, you don't have to wait for the builder to go broke, die, or disappear. With the current system, that's what has to happen. And there are cases, particularly if the builder is disreputable, where they can delay putting their company into some form of liquidation and leave the consumer waiting. And that obviously isn't a great outcome, particularly when it's clear which way the whole thing is going to go eventually. So the first resort insurance does remove that incentive to drag it out. So that's not a bad thing. The challenge will be, though, how does the system work? If the rectification order system, which is going to be the trigger for insurance being paid out if the builder's still around, if that system becomes too easy for clients to get orders, very quickly you can see insurance claims going up, and that means only one other thing goes up, premiums. And that is the real concern, because premiums don't get paid for by builders. They're part of the contract price. They're part of the cost for the consumer. So if we find that premiums start skyrocketing because the claim system is too generous, we will very quickly see the premiums increase to an extent that it makes housing unaffordability an even worse issue than it already is.
Yeah.
So that is a real concern. The other challenge would be that if the system's tight and too tight for builders getting cover, you'll find there's less builders available able to take on jobs. And that could also have an impact on costs. Because if you're a consumer who wants to get a builder and you're being told, well, look, by say you go and talk to 5 builders and 3 of them say, look, sorry, we don't have enough space for you at the moment. We don't have the policies to buy. You'll have to wait. You suddenly find yourself stuck with 2 builders to talk to. Now, that's not great for competition and it's not great for choice. So there are challenges there as well. So it's probably too early to say whether or not the premium increases will be drastic or not, but I'm pretty confident to say that yes, the premiums will go up. They've already gone up twice in the last 3 years. We had them go up by about 50% and about 40% over the last couple of years. I wouldn't be surprised if, particularly for multi-units, which I know is not necessarily big for your audience, you see pretty dramatic, scary increases. But even for detached single homes, you'll probably see some pretty big increases coming. And that would probably start from July next year.
It's a delicate line to walk, isn't it, in terms of, ensuring affordability, shortage of homes, all these issues that are out there at the moment, and this just adds another level of complexity to the whole mix.
It does. And look, insurance is important, and I think it's really worth stressing that if you're going to get a home built for you on a block of land, the system which you'll have access to in Victoria when this system is fully set up will be pretty damn good. If you're a consumer who's going to a display village and you're going to get a home built for you somewhere, the cover you get from government will probably end up being pretty good compared to particularly what you get if you go and buy an apartment. Because with this new law, it still excludes apartments and any buildings over 3 stories. So if you go and buy a high-rise apartment, what you get from the government is a 2-year developer bond. So the developer has to put 2% of the contract price, or so the building price, into a bond. Then there can be orders made to have the work fixed, but realistically, there's no insurance. So if the developer and builder disappear, you're left with fighting with the other lot owners or the other apartment owners to get your hands on the scraps for this, the
Your share
2%
of
bond.
that.
So it's probably worth stressing that if you're going to be looking at getting a home built and you want to get proper insurance cover, you've really got to go with a detached home or a apartment in a block which is only 3 stories or less. And I wouldn't be surprised if you see in the near future builders of those projects promoting the fact that they do have insurance available.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Becomes a tradable commodity, doesn't it?
It does.
Just on the insurance thing there. So I think in the last 12 plus months, Keith, it's been I think adopted quite well with the builders that I know and talk to. And what I mean by that is for the potential home buyers listening, it's really important that your builder takes out insurance on
Yes.
your build before you pay or get issued a 5% invoice for the balance of 5% deposit. It must be done in advance. So currently, I would say I don't know any builders personally, Keith, that are not doing it that way anymore. There were some a while back, but is there something you'd mentioned, the buyer protections bill coming to give a bit
Yes.
more certainty there for
It, it,
home
it actually
buyers?
it actually does make a bit of a tweak there. And one common issue is that a lot there's still cases where you will get a builder who has or received a deposit without having got the insurance. But what it will normally be is a client comes in, signs the contract, wants to pay the deposit. That's human nature. They want to lock in. Sometimes, and this is, I'm literally quoting the words I get from members, the girl who does the insurance was away that day. So you'll get the case where you might get a deposit paid on day 1 and the insurance isn't issued until day 2 or day 3. Now, that's oversight. It's not deliberate. It's just going to happen. With the buyer protection bill, they're going to change the system a bit more. What they'll say is that if you're a home buyer and you sign a contract to build, if it's over $20,000, the builder has 10 days from the contract signing date to get the insurance. So what it means is that if the young lady who does the insurance isn't in that day, not a big problem, as long as the builder does it within 10 days. And I'm pretty confident the VPC will be auditing builders to make sure that deposits are being paid and then insurance is being issued pretty quickly. And don't forget that because the VPC will be the one body, it should be easier for it to be able to match up things like building permits and deposits. So if you're a builder who goes off and applies for a deposit, so applies for a permit, and the BPC can see that you bought your insurance a couple of days before, but the contract was signed 6 months ago, right? You put your hands up to be punished. So I think the system will be pretty rigorous and will ensure that consumers do get that protection.
So even on untitled or unregistered land, client wants to sign the thing now, the land's not ready for 6 months. Would that be encouraging people to, because I know builders want to hold off. It's like, why would I use my insurance space when,
And that is going to be, look, and that is and I have mentioned this to government, there is a reality that because builders are going to be required to, within 10 days, even if they don't want to take a deposit, get the insurance, some builders will have to restructure the way they engage with their clients to ensure that they don't have a situation where they've signed a contract, the build might be 6 or more months away from even being able to start. The builder obviously doesn't want to have their insurance on hold for a project which may or may not go ahead, because not every signed contract proceeds to a final project starting. Now, as a rule of thumb, 20% is the percentage that drops off. So if you're a builder and you've got 100% of your jobs committed, but you know 20 are going to drop off, you don't really want to have the insurance locked in and blocking future sales. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see some builders change the way they structure their arrangements with clients. There might be preliminary arrangements, there might be holding deposits, there might be other arrangements in place. And look, that's a necessary outcome of the fact that the government's changed the way this system will work. The key thing will be, and I'm confident that most builders will do this, it's about giving the client the confidence, the certainty about what they're going to have built and how much they have to pay without exposing them to undue risk. And I think we will probably see eventually a system evolve where if you're a consumer who's paid any form of deposit, but you haven't yet got your final contract, you might see that the insurance initially covers your deposit, so that if that goes wrong, you're covered. And then when you sign the actual building contract, the full insurance kicks in. That's a system I think will have to now evolve, and we'll see that gradually come in over maybe the next year, maybe a little bit longer.
Yeah.
And that should help protect consumers. So if you've paid money, I would be expecting that the consumer can go home having signed the contract or signed a arrangement and paid some money. That money is safe. If things go wrong, and they usually don't, but if they do, there is coverage.
Yeah. Yeah, it'd be interesting to learn a bit more about that. Currently, everyone's doing a prelim agreement with a prelim fee, an agreed amount to complete drawings and all these sorts of things. And then it'll be this waiting time. So for the people who are listening who are home buyers, the builder can't just go and get insurance on 500 jobs. Like
No.
builders are, they're given an insurance amount, a warranty insurance amount or domestic builder insurance amount. It's based on their history and all those sorts of things. So one builder may be given a couple of $1 million, which means they can do 4 or 5 jobs if they're smaller houses, or one if it's a multi, like a really high-end house. And some of the bigger builders will be working on obviously such larger figures than that. So that's the reason we ask that question is there's no point a builder chewing up some of their insurance space if your house is not due to be built due to the land not being ready for 6 months or 12 months. So the question
right.
really relates is, well, what do we do in the meantime to make sure the client's secure, but also make sure we're not chewing up the insurance space? So it'd be interesting to see how that evolves there, Keith. Yeah.
Yeah, so look, and that's probably with my current job is very much a key issue that I've been talking to government about to try and get them to understand that there's competing concerns here. You've got the builder not wanting to be forced to buy insurance that they may not ever actually really be able to use. But at the same time, we also want to make sure consumers get the certainty that they want. Consumers want to be able to say, okay, I've got a block of land, I've got a builder, I know what home's being built, and I know how much it's going to cost. Now, and ideally, they want that sooner rather than later, and so they should. Now, it's their biggest investment, usually. It's the biggest commitment of their life. They deserve to be allowed to have some flexibility. And so the government's being told by people like me, okay, yes, you need to have consumer protection, but you also need to be careful not to bring in a system that is so watertight, so restrictive that it effectively distorts choice and leaves consumers being forced to wait because builders have to rationally wait. That would not be a good outcome for consumers. So we're very, very keen to make sure government gets that message. And look, I get the impression they've understood that, but we'll see how they go.
Yeah.
No, great.
So when is the BPC officially coming into play? And what should HIA members and other builders be doing right now to prepare for these changes?
Yes, well, look, it's already in place. It officially started on the 1st of July this year, so 2025. The full powers will probably be in place from 1 July 2026. As I said at the start, for most home builders, they won't notice too much changing at the moment because it's still more a merger of existing functions, existing activities. The real changes will come when the rectification order powers and the new statutory insurance systems start to roll in. For a home builder, particularly one who's a member of HIA, you'll be getting regular updates from us about what the system looks like, how it's evolving. Many of you will be contacted by us seeking your feedback, your commentary, your guidance. Will be doing some more education about this system as the year progresses, and probably more early next year as we get more certainty about the exact form of the insurance. For most home builders at this stage, it's be alert, but not alarmed. I would suggest stay in touch with your industry association like us, read the emails and other communications we'll put out through social media and the like to try and help you understand what's coming. Probably by February, March next year, if not a little bit earlier, you'll start to really need to turn your mind to what does this mean for you. The challenge will be that next year for home builders, we also have probably a new version of the Domestic Building Contracts Act coming out, and that would lead to a situation where you will also have to change your contract. So we'll have to give guidance to members about that as well. So there'll be a fair bit of information having to come, which is ideally would have it all happen relatively quickly, sometime mid next year, but it might be dragged out a bit with the contracts law. So members, stay alert, stay in touch. If you are a member and you're concerned or you want to know what it really means for you, don't forget that HIA has an info service. You can call us on 1300 650 620 and you can speak to our team and we can give you some guidance. And if you're a member and you want to speak to someone like me or my deputy Stephen, get in touch. We're happy to give you a call, happy to come and see you, happy to talk to you. We know this is going to be a fairly significant change. It may not be as drastic as we fear, but it will be significant. And so reach out, keep your eyes on the social media, on your emails, but don't be shy about giving us a call if you want some more information as well.
I know, Keith, I was chatting to another builder at a social function a couple of weeks ago outside of the industry, and they were pretty panicky about it all. And I was probably a bit more relaxed about it, saying that in the end, we've got to find a pretty common ground here that's workable for all parties. And so I think that, yeah, there'll be a bit of argy-bargy at the start, and I think that dust will settle and things hopefully will settle down and it becomes workable and amicable for all parties involved, and we can, then head forward in the right direction, as an industry, and houses are needed, people need housing, governments survive on our industry from a taxational purpose. They don't want to see things go belly up and things get ugly. So yeah, certainly, there's a lot of change, but it's also, I'm sure that it, won't be as bad as some fear it may well be. So
definitely. And I think we also need to keep in mind that when this all settles, unless the government make a complete meal of it, we should probably we already have a fairly good, quite frankly, consumer protection system for home building customers in Victoria. We'll have an even better one, and we'll hopefully have a system that for both consumers and home builders is good news, in that we should see the dodgy operators being more easily removed from the industry, so that the good operators, the good people who are doing the right thing, can get on with building homes for consumers and getting them into their new homes. So it can be a very exciting change. There is a challenge. I've already mentioned the government has to resource it properly, and they have to have the political spine to say to some people, look, sorry, you're not getting immediate gratification. We've got to focus on the greater good. And if they can do that, this system could make a big difference.
Yeah, it's good. To wrap things up, builders' confidence out there, how are you seeing that? Builders going okay, and I guess are you getting as many consumers coming to the HIA with concerns and questions that they're not getting answered?
The consumer calls have actually slowed down a bit, which is good. And I think we've built a confidence. Look, morale is still not brilliant. I think as a general observation about business in Victoria, and this is for any business, there is a very powerful view that the current government is extremely anti-business, particularly small business. And unfortunately, that is not going to settle anytime soon. I hate to say it, but I just don't think the Victorian government really understands why business is so important for economic success. They are just too driven by ideological desires, and whilst they're often driven, pardon me, by a genuine desire to do good, I think their ideological restrictions do make them struggle to provide a good environment for business. With home building, it's probably getting a little bit better at the moment. Obviously, interest rate cuts have made a big difference. Consumer confidence is returning. We are, and have been for some time, getting feedback that display village traffic has been increasing, leads have been increasing, people are asking more questions. We're now getting some indications that sales are starting to go up again. So look, I think there'll be a bit of a quiet period later this year as we finish off some of the surge of homes from a couple of years ago, and we get ready for new homes to start, particularly as land has to be made available. But I think it's looking like it's not going to be boom times, but I think we are going to see a gradual improvement in business confidence and particularly in building activity once again. But it won't be the surge the government needs to get its 800,000 homes in 10 years. We're not going to
Yeah,
get there. That's unfortunately, I think it's
pipe
time to
dream,
say
isn't it?
it was always going to be a massive challenge. I think
Yeah,
now that's lost. I can't see the government making it, but we can still see increases and more homes being built, and particularly the homes that people want to live in.
yeah, it's good. I think that great line, you can shoot for the stars, but if you end up on the moon, the view's pretty good still. So if we end up with 700,000 homes, for example, it's still going to be a great result, just not
Yes,
quite the result we're chasing. So it's the positivity around that's really
yes,
needed, and that drive is certainly needed to keep things ticking along. So
yes.
Yeah.
it's good.
Excellent. Well, we could probably ask you a whole bunch more questions, to be honest, Keith, and go on for hours, but we might leave it there on this topic, the BPC. Thanks for taking the time this Saturday morning to explain some of that. Definitely gives great insight to us, myself and Darren, but to the people on the builder's side of the fence, definitely would have learned a thing or two, and certainly the buyers, just to know there's a bit more confidence out there that builders are adhering to the insurance thing and buyer protection and all these things,
Yes,
having one place to call instead of bouncing around to three different ones, and like all these things are pointing the right direction. I'm confident in saying it's all done with the right intention,
yes.
and what I guess we're going to have to be patient with is understanding that it's not going to be perfect on day one, and it will take some time. So yeah, excellent. So if anyone listening or watching, please leave us a 5-star review. That'll be fantastic because that really contributes to our podcast getting out there further to other home buyers. If you have any additional feedback, questions, topic ideas, jump on to homebuildinghub.com.au. That'll be very helpful. We're getting a few of those now, Darren. We can come back to people directly or discuss the topic in another episode. And again, I just want to say thank you, Keith, because this is the second time you've jumped on, and it's really, I think, a great forum for you to be able to talk about things and for us to, give you some questions and get some clarity on a few things. And hopefully in this informal, conversational sort of podcast helps you to be able to do that.
Oh, look, it's definitely great. And look, what I really like is having the opportunity to not just talk to people in the building industry, but also the general public, people who are looking at getting a home built. Because, look, I deal with home builders every day. The vast majority of them are good, decent people who just want to build a home, hand it over, run a business, and they are copping a lot of unnecessary flack at the moment due to the activity of a small minority who are hopefully going to be weeded out to a large extent by these new laws and this new regulator. So I just urge consumers, follow your gut, but also go off and do things like check the BPC website, make sure the builder you're dealing with is registered. If it's a big builder like a Metricon or Simmons, yes, they're registered, it's fine. But just use your common sense. If you have questions, talk to the builder early, get their help quickly. Vast majority of builders, they want the clients to be happy. And the best way for them to be sure their client's happy is to have the client come and talk to them if there's any concerns. So just keep that in mind.
Oh, great. Good
Excellent.
on you, Keith. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. We'll see you on the next one.
Thanks for listening to the podcast, guys. And just our disclaimer, whilst we're all about providing value to you, this podcast should not be considered as legal or financial advice. It contains general information only, and you should seek out independent professional advice on your personal situation before making any legal or financial decisions.
1, 2,